Hey guys, it's a Scholar General, Mo Jiang Dianbing. So today's extra special because I'm actually going to be reviewing a sword. Now, what I have here is the Scott Rodell cutting dao. So Scott Rodell is a very famous practitioner of Yang-style Tai Chi, or Tai Chi Quan. He designed this sword to be used for test cutting, and it's manufactured by Hanwei. Now let's look at the scabbard. So the scabbard looks really nice. It's this nice hardwood. And, it's a scabbard, and it does its job, which is to hold on to the sword. So we can see here, it's not like the tightest fitting scabbard ever, but it doesn't really have to be, because you're going to be holding the sword like this. So, yeah, it works just fine. So moving on to the fittings on the hilt, right? We have this nice big disc guard, and it's actually secured with a screw, and that's simpler to manufacture as well as easier to take off if you need to. It's not as traditional, or it's not really traditional like a peening or putting a peg through the tang is, but it works just fine for what it is, which is supposed to be test cutting. It's not supposed to be a replica exactly like a museum piece or something. Let's also take a closer look at this grip. So this grip is actually has like a maroon colored ray skin, and it has this black leather wrapped over it. And I have to say, I've been swinging this around and cutting some things, and it's provides you a really comfortable and secure grip. I've never felt like it was abrasive, and I've also never felt like it's gonna come out of my hand. I've never felt like it's loose. So the grip is actually one of my favorite parts about this, and I just think it's very well done. Let's move on and talk a little bit more about the blade. Now, overall, this sword is about a little over 2 pounds. So it's like 2 pounds and a couple ounces, or a little under a kilogram, right? And that's pretty reasonable given that you have a fairly broad blade that is 29 inches or 73.5 centimeters in length, right? Now the point of balance, let's see, is actually about, I want to say 7 inches or so from the guard, or the husho, right? And so it's a little bit out there, but it doesn't feel particularly heavy. It's a little more forward weighted than some other swords, right? But this is supposed to be for cutting, so the forward weight should put a little oomph behind it, basically, is the idea. The blade profile is pretty good. What you have is you actually have this flat. It's completely flat here, and then it has a bevel starting about there. It might be hard to see on the camera, but it has a bevel that starts about here and then goes straight into the blade on both sides, right? It's symmetrical. It's a fairly simple cross-section, but it does the job, and that nice long wide bevel gives you a gradual taper to the edge, which means that it has pretty good edge geometry. I'm not doing like an unboxing. I've already been using this some. But I did, when I first got it, I did try to test the sharpness on some paper, and it wasn't, razor sharp, or it actually wasn't paper cutting sharp. I can try to demonstrate that here using like a lower section of the blade that I haven't really used yet. So, but the basic idea, it's not, I can kind of grab it, right? But it's not like, yeah, I didn't really get much there. So it's not, it can do it some, but it's tearing, if you can see. So it's not the sharpest thing out of the box, but it's sharp. And the nice thing is that the edge bevels are good enough, and it's well enough. The edge bevels are made well enough that it should be fairly easy to, put a very, very sharp edge on there. Besides that, There's also like distal taper. We can take a look at that. And towards the base, it's actually pretty thick. I don't know how easy that is to see, but it's fairly thick, and then it slowly tapers out and gets quite thin out here towards the tip, which is pretty much what you would want. That nice thinner tip out here means that it passes more easily through targets, basically. The manufacturers did not state exactly what kind of steel this is made out of. They simply said that it's like this custom blend that they used for this sword. I haven't noticed anything particularly amazing or particularly wrong with this. It seems like it's holding up pretty well as far as the edge is concerned. Yeah, so I can't say a whole lot about the steel. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the, like, this isn't meant to be a historical replica, but there are features on it which historical swords did have, such as during the Qing dynasty, some officers' swords did indeed have iron or steel cross hilt fittings. So you might think, well, you always see brass fittings on these Dao or Jian and stuff, but some Dao did indeed have iron fittings. So they weren't exactly in this form, but they did have iron. So that's just one thing. Another is that this blade profile, where it's kind of like a pentagon type thing, it actually it's somewhat reminiscent, not completely, but somewhat reminiscent of what's called sometimes called a qi jia dao. Now, qi stands in that, the qi means Qi Ji Guang, which is the Ming Dynasty general that fought against the Japanese pirates in like Fujian back in the Ming Dynasty. Now, it was said that, he took a liking to some Japanese blades, and he wanted to, use some elements of their design. So it's called a Qi family or Qi style blade. Are blades that have, are Daos that have a, blade profile that's similar to a katana, but usually a little broader and thinner. And this one is somewhat reminiscent of a Qi Jia Dao. It does seem to get a little bit thinner towards the tip than many traditionally made swords do. But overall, the blade profile itself is not like anything particularly that would be out of place, let's say, in a historical, Ming or Qing. But anyway, so that is some of the basic information about the sword. It moves, fairly nicely. It's not like the fastest sword ever, and it takes a little bit of getting used to if you're not used to, slightly heavier blades. Overall, it can feel pretty nice when you're, going through some forms and stuff. But enough of that. Let's actually go out and cut some water bottles. Alright guys, so there you have it. As you can see, I'm still practicing. I'm not like the best cutter in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it's always a skill and practice. So overall, what are my recommendations and thoughts on this cutting dowel? I really like it. I think it feels really nice, and it's the edge geometry or the blade geometry is probably one of the best parts about it. I would like to get a little bit sharper, but that kind of gives me an opportunity to practice sharpening it. Overall, I think I would recommend it for sure. I do want to talk a little bit about where you can buy this sword, because if you go to like Hanwei's official site, you'll see it priced at $490, which it is a nice blade, but I think that could be a little more than some people might be willing to put down on a practice cutting sword, just kind of when they're getting into it and stuff. The good news is that you can find it on like 7 Stars Trading Company for a fraction of the cost, like $320. That's a much more competitive price, and I think it's actually on Kult of Athena for just a little bit more than that. So that being said, 300 something bucks is like a very, very reasonably priced blade, especially a functional one. Like there's wall hangers that you can get cheaper, but I would not recommend cutting with those. So overall, those are my thoughts on this blade. I hope you guys like this review, and feel free to post your thoughts and comments, or critiques of my form down below. See you next time.